Yes, this is wildlife biologist Eric Orff with my YouTube channel, and I'm here today in the Fish and Game Region 3 office in Durham, where I worked out of for the last 2 decades of my career before I retired in 2007, with Cheri Patterson, who I worked with. Now, I started in November of '76. When did you start, Cheri? You've been here a lot longer than me.
No, I started in June of '77.
Okay, so she started, but she's still here and I'm not. That's the difference.
Yes.
So we both were in fisheries at the time. And when I first 2 years I spent in fisheries until in October of '78, where I moved to the game division at the time to be the first bear biologist. But so we worked on projects over the years there, and then in '88, December of '88, I actually moved into this office, the first one. I got a key in December of '88 before the building had been turned over, but I got a key to come over here and take a look at the building, and I stayed. The only one here like for a month or so.
Yeah, because I don't think we moved until '89.
Yeah, sometime maybe. Everybody else showed up a little later on, a month or 2 or 3 later. But anyways, it was a nice space to be. So anyways, I want to talk about coho salmon first. So a little bit about the history of coho salmon here in the state. When did the program more or less get underway? How successful was it at times, in maybe the peak years, and when did it wind up and why? So, so let's talk coho. So when did it start, you think?
I'm not sure when it started. It was going when I came in '77.
Okay.
I think it may have started maybe 5 years before I came.
And who started it?
I think Larry Stolte.
That was my guess. Larry Stolte would probably be the one,
started
yeah.
it, and he is now living in the West Coast.
Okay.
Retired from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and living in the West Coast. They had started putting coho salmon in 3 rivers, the Cochico, the Lamprey, and the Exeter. Fish started coming back. They're 3-year-olds when they return. We stock them out at about 1.5 years from our hatchery.
Which was at the time, and it was the Milford hatchery back then.
The hatchery was built specifically for the anadromous fish program.
Okay.
Now it's a state-owned trout
Right.
hatchery at this point in time. But its original funding was for anadromous species. So they were trying to find a salmon species that would be able to supply fishing opportunities in the fall. And they started out with coho.
Huh.
And it took several years for us to figure out how to stock the coho so that they would return in great enough numbers
Okay.
as adults, so that we could harvest our own eggs and raise them in the hatchery and stock them out. And that was the other research that we did, was determining when to stock them out.
Okay.
Because you wanted to make sure that they got stocked out before they imprinted to the hatchery
Okay.
waters,
All right.
or became
Right.
smolts.
Okay.
Or else they'd try and go back to the watershed that the Milford hatchery was working out of, which was
Merrimack.
Merrimack watershed.
Yeah.
So we determined through studies that they needed to get put out at a particular time in the springtime before
Okay.
they imprinted on the water. They got put into the Lamprey River because that was the most efficient fish ladder
Okay.
for us to work out of
Okay.
in order to keep this program going.
Okay.
So we made determinations that we needed at least 500,000 fish to be stocked out 1.5 years after we gathered the eggs,
Okay.
in order to get enough fish back to harvest enough eggs to keep the program going.
Okay.
As I said before. So the program was going along very, very well with Bob Fawcett and myself as the fisheries biologist on that particular project, until they found spawning pairs in Maine and Canada waters.
Oh, really? Ah.
So in order to stop any sort of invasive encroachment of this West Coast species,
Ah.
we started to drop the numbers that we stocked out
Okay.
that's when we pretty much found out that we needed about 500,000 fish
Huh.
to go out to the ocean in order to get enough back. So it started to dwindle, so that we just
So at
weren't
peak
getting
numbers,
enough
how
fish.
many did you have coming to the ladder and the lamprey? I remember in February one year, I went down and in a half an hour, I caught 2 huge Coho salmon right there in Newmarket one
Those are the
winter.
ones that didn't make it up into the ladder,
Ah,
because they come up in the fall.
okay,
If they don't make it up in time and the water temperatures drop so much, they can't make it up into the ladder.
that's why I caught them
So
there.
that's why you caught them there, yeah. I would say 5,000,
Okay,
I think.
you were getting through the ladder.
Yeah, we get up into the ladder.
Wow.
Yeah.
And how many eggs did that produce?
Million.
Okay, 1 million eggs, so,
Million.
wow. So you actually had probably almost enough to continue the program.
We did have enough to keep the program going
Huh?
at its peak
Okay,
for several
Wow.
years.
Wow.
Again, until there was straying that was occurring. And we didn't want to have any sort of invasive species.
okay. So it was the invasive species that really turned the tide.
It did. They were
Wow.
considered not natives.
So it was
Which they
pressure from
aren't.
the other states in Canada that really probably made the difference.
And the Atlantic Salmon Federation,
Right,
absolutely.
okay, yeah, okay.
There was lots of pressure not to continue
Continue.
on with the program. There was also a UNH professor, Phil Sawyer, I believe, that was working with them in a hatchery situation in Maine
Okay.
also. And he had to stop his project,
Huh.
his program also.
I know UNH was doing something here in Durham at a little, almost like a little hatchery, because the one guy that, what was his name, that worked on that, who worked on cohos too, at UNH. They had some kind of a facility, research facility about,
That could have been Phil Sawyer.
okay, all right. But they were doing something either in Durham or Madbury, somewhere. They had some kind of facility where they were working on cohos, I remember. I went there once. All right.
Can't remember.
No, no. Come on, Ginkgo, kick in. No, like
Too
that.
many years.
Yeah,
Too much water over that dam.
So the hatchery, so the fish ran in the fall up the ladders from September?
Yeah, August, when the water started to cool down.
Okay, so
Late August, right through until water temperatures just got too cold. For the fish
So
to
that's when there'd be
so-
a lot of these cohos in Great Bay. I know there were some people that got very adept at catching. There was the tadpolly, the orange tadpolly, the famous lure that maybe Dick Penny or one of those, kind of highlighted, that was very successful at catching coho in Great Bay for a number of years. It got to be quite an interesting fisheries. I remember trolling for them a few times myself, and I caught bluefish. I never did catch a coho in Great Bay, but I tried because it was the big thing back then. Oh, you gotta try fishing for cohos in Great Bay. It's unbelievable fisheries, and
It was a very exciting fishery, but they weren't feeding.
Right,
Because they're coming
right.
back to spawn. They're a West Coast species, so they
Right.
come back and spawn and then they die.
right,
When they come back, they're not feeding.
right.
So you really have to throw something bright and flashy at them
Okay.
in order to kind of get them a little upset and strike
Right,
out
right, right.
at a lure. So
Huh.
you're right, anything orange or
Right.
silver spoons or gold spoons.
Yeah,
or
yeah, okay.
bright red sort of lures and such.
Were the ones to use,
Were
yeah.
the ones to use, yeah.
Now, did you census any of those fishermen? Do you know how many they caught?
Yeah, we had surveys going on
Oh, you did?
all along,
Ah.
so we knew, but I can't remember what
Okay.
the numbers were.
Likely hundreds?
Oh, yeah,
Thousands?
no.
Okay.
Just hundreds.
Hundreds, all right.
Caught.
Well, that's cool. Well, that's a bit of information that's well worth grabbing today. So this is
Absolutely.
awesome.
I think we even have a mounted one here.
Okay.
somewhere.
Well, that's awesome. Well,
So
good.
after that program ended,
Okay. I'm going to wrap up this one, and we're going to do one on salmon, Atlantic salmon. So
Okay.
I'm just going to shut this one off, and we'll go back.